thing on. This right here is the best thing in the world. This is jarred peach halves. Fucking awesome. It's in grape juice. It tastes really good. Put that bitch in the fridge. It's really good. I will also, I'll dump some maple syrup in there, a little bit of salt, dump a little sugar in there, and then I put the lid on there and I shake her up. And it's just amazing. We're talking, of course, about sugar fasting, and today we're going to be talking about taking it a step further and going in fasting. Some of you may have heard of juice fasting before, back when people were just blending shit up and juicing. But that might be what it takes for some people. And it might be an intervention that you need. For a lot of people, they're not going to need that intervention. But what I'm trying to share here with you today is that sugar fasting is about weight loss. It's about losing weight. It's about losing body fat. So we are trying to get you to actually have the scale going down. We want that scale going down continuously. I see a lot of people joining in right now. If you have questions, please fire them my way. I'm going to be doing a Q&A here in a little bit after I get through some of what I need to get off my chest. And obviously, donations are always appreciated. So those of you that give me a super chat, pray hands. Thank you. Appreciate it. So anyway, I want to talk about troubleshooting the sugar diet, okay? Troubleshooting the sugar diet. The sugar diet, if you remember correctly, it's a little bit different than sugar fasting. Sugar fasting probably doesn't need that much troubleshooting, but the sugar diet might need a little bit of help, right? Because the starch, sometimes people might be consuming a lot of starch. Maybe when they eat their meat, they eat a lot of fat, and maybe that tips them over the edge. And maybe they just get into an eating frenzy once they are no longer sugar fasting and they spin out of control. So how do we kind of figure this out? I think a lot of people are kind of tippy-toeing and they're just trying to get used to the idea of sugar fasting. I think that's okay. That's what I did. That's how I started. I started with the sugar diet and then I moved into sugar fasting. And this week, I'm doing an entire week of sugar fasting, and I'm primarily sticking with what I'm promoting here today, fruit and fruit juice. Fruit and fruit juice. Juice fast. Fruit fast. Let's call it fruit fast. Let's call it fruit forward. For those of you that still want your candy and still want your honey and still want your maple syrup, let's just call it fruit forward. You know, try to have the majority of your energy for the day, the majority of your carbohydrates are coming from fruit. That would be a great place to start. And that way a little less is coming from candy and maple syrup and straight sugar and all that stuff, right? So remember, the sugar diet is when we're breaking the fast with lean meat and starch. It's fruit by day, lean meat and starch by night. Fruit by day, lean meat and starch by night. If you noticed, my face is getting a little more angular. I'm getting a little bit leaner. I'm getting a little leaner every day. When I started on Sunday, I was 213, and I was 207 this morning. Tomorrow when I wake up, I'll probably be 187 pounds. Now tomorrow when I wake up, I'll probably be, I'm hoping to be 207 or something like that, 206. And 207's been the lowest I've been so far, but my weight creeped back up. 207 was also kind of a dehydrated weight. I think it was like after a workout or something like that. So I like getting those just to kind of see them because it's encouraging. Just right now, just out of curiosity, I just weighed myself after, eating a little bit throughout the day. I weighed 210. So if I go to bed tonight, and I've been weighing myself frequently, and I want to share that with you guys as well. When you weigh yourself frequently and you get kind of tethered to that scale, I'm not trying to obsess about it or have any unhealthy relationship with it, but I'm just learning it. Learning that scale and learning what I weigh is really important. My low body weight, my lowest body weight, if we go back a few months, my lowest body weight before bed was 217. And that was really helpful to learn that and to know that. And then to really understand what did I need to weigh going to bed. And I knew if I weighed 220 going to bed that I was not going to wake up with a low, right? A new low. But I want those new lows. And so in order for me to have those new lows, I need to be bringing the scale down in many different ways, and I should be weighing less I should be just weighing less, period, right? I should be weighing less across the board. Whether I'm weighing myself in the evening or whether I'm weighing myself at lunch, all the numbers should be trending downward. Now, of course, I might be 210 at one point of the day, and it might be 212 at another point of the day, and 214 at another point of the day, and that's all fine. That's the way it should be. But over time, my highest weight should start to creep down. My lowest weight should start to creep down, right? Like all the weight should be creeping downward. And I know that's totally understandable to you guys. We will have some weight variance sometimes with water and with the types of fruit and the types of things that we eat and drink. You're gonna have some shifts. You're gonna have a whoosh and a swoosh, and those kinds of things are going to happen. You having a hard time charging up?
I am, yeah. But
yeah, maybe you can ask Andy too for some other charger. I'm sure we have something else that we could charge. You might be able to, well, that's kind of far, but you could probably charge somewhere. Anyway, yeah, troubleshooting this diet is really important. It's one of the things that is the most important thing, is to make that scale go down. And I want to just continue to encourage you guys to work on getting that scale to go downward. It's not always easy to figure out. And I see people posting about their food and people are excited, posting pictures of candy and stuff, but I don't care that much about that. I'd rather see the scale trending downward. How are you going to get the scale to trend downward? How are you going to get the scale to go down? You're going to get the scale to go down by troubleshooting. The closer related that we stick to fruit and fruit juice, the better off we're going to be. That's sugar fasting. Now, if you're doing the sugar diet and you want to continue to do the sugar diet, but you're not quite losing weight, rule number one is I would encourage you to implement more sugar fasting. It's that simple. Spend more time sugar fasting and you'll lose weight a little faster. Another option that you can do is while you're doing the sugar diet, once you come off of the sugar diet and you have your starch and you have your lean meat and so on, then from there you can just make sure that you're not consuming too much fat. Switch to chicken breast, switch to shrimp, scallops, those types of things. Switch to stuff that's really, really lean. Remember, 93.7 lean ground beef, as awesome as it is, it still has over 30 grams of fat. I think it's around 32 grams of fat. That's pretty considerable. So you might want to cut that with turkey, lean turkey, 99%, 99.1 lean ground turkey. And when you cut that, now we get a percentage that's somewhere in the middle of 93 and 99, right? So that's another way that you can assist yourself with losing some weight. Another way you can do it is you can have your lean meat and your starch on the sugar diet when, post-workout. That would be a great time to do it. Now, the post-workout window is much larger than we thought. I think it's like up to 5 or 6 hours, so we don't have to really worry about it being immediately after the workout. You could just have some fresh fruit after a training session and some fruit juice, and then you can kind of prolong the protein and the lean protein and the starch until later in the evening. So making sure the protein's really lean is going to be important. Making sure you don't overdo the starch is also going to be important. Something I've been recommending to people for a long time is, I think be careful with the starch that you choose. If the starch that you choose is a cereal, well, then it's obviously going to be much harder. If the starch that you chose was some rice, that'll be a little easier to deal with. You made a big, nice teriyaki bowl, chicken breast, some vegetables, and some rice. That sounds awesome. Now, it still might be pretty easy to overdo the rice because you might be, scooping in tons and tons of rice. You also have other options, and what I usually encourage people to choose over rice is potatoes. Because a potato is very satiating, very satisfying, very filling, and it might not be as good as, for some of you, you might not think it's as good as the rice, but it is delicious, it is nutritious, and it's going to be something that will fill you up, and you're less likely to overeat on the potato, in my opinion, because rice, you can probably eat like 2 or 3 cups of rice pretty easily, whereas trying to eat 2 or 3 potatoes or eating an equal amount of carbohydrates from a potato might be a little tougher. I realize I'm talking about like these little minuscule things, but sometimes these little minuscule things can be things to help you really move the needle. Another thing you can do if you're having trouble with losing weight on the days that you're doing the sugar diet, because even if you're doing the Smelly Protocol, remember you're actually implementing sugar fasting and the sugar diet into the solar system of the Smelly Protocol. So when you start your sugar fast and you're doing sugar by day, lean meat and starch by night, you may want to just have a little bit less of those sugars when you're doing the actual sugar diet. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I'm not saying that when you're sugar fasting to limit anything. It's only when you're doing the sugar diet. Does that make sense? On the day that you're gonna have your lean meat and your starch, maybe just back off a little bit on the giant smoothie that you start your morning off with. Maybe it's a little smaller. And I also think that it's easier to have a little bit of suffering throughout the day than it is to have suffering later on in the evening. I think it's really nice, really wonderful to end your day with not only like a pretty good sized dinner, but with a good sized something at like 7 or 8 p.m. while you're watching TV. I know a lot of people watch TV or they sit down with their phone and they just kind of goof off on their phone. And when you're doing that, I think that's a good opportunity to get like a pretty good bolus of nutrients, pretty good bolus of food. This is where you want food volume though, and you don't just want hard-hitting sugars because you're not really doing anything. So if you have a bunch of hard-hitting sugars and you're just sort of sitting there, that might start to kind of just make you not feel so great. It could also, for some people, make them feel sleepy, which is nice. Normally from fruit, you're not gonna really have too much of a problem because fruit, and I got another hack for you in a second with fruit and candy, but you know, fruit it's really like scientifically engineered, or it's engineered by nature for us to be used to. And it's engineered for us to not feel like shit off of. It's supposed to give us really good, sustainable, usable energy. And it does that, it provides that for us. It's just that sometimes if you blend something up or you start having, you know, things that have, you know, other stuff in there and you're mixing like juices and fruits together, you can end up with quite the sugar bomb. So in the evening time, it's better to be a little cautious with that. And that's why I started doing the smoothie over fruit. It has been really awesome for me because I'm eating and I'm drinking this liquid. So that's another hack in terms of fruit. If you're having a hard time with, you know, after you have some fruit juice, you're feeling a little weird, or the sugars are rocking you a little bit, or the candy is rocking you. So here's the candy hack. If you want to have some candy, have some fruit first. Because now we're just going to be lowering down. We're going to be trying to digest more stuff. We're going to be slowing down the absorption of that, you know, that turning into glucose into the body. It should slow down the whole process because you have some fiber. You also have cofactors that are in fruit. You have potassium and different things like that to help regulate blood sugar. Another way to just make sure you're not feeling like shit in general is to make sure you're drinking enough water. I have heard people complaining about cramps, so we need water and salt. We need water and salt. You're now getting a whole new amount of potassium these days from getting that fruit. And because of that, we have to make sure we balance some of that out with salt. And we also need to make sure that we dilute that a little bit with water. So it's important. Yesterday, I got so many questions about cramping. And it's funny because I was on my couch and I did squats yesterday. I'm on my couch and I'm like, man, what is wrong with these people? These people are retarded. How come they don't understand? Like, you gotta hydrate. Everyone's saying they're not thirsty when they're eating the fruit, which I understand. I don't feel thirsty either, but I still understand the importance of drinking water. And then I went to get up and I got the worst cramp in the middle of my leg that I haven't had in a really long time, right in the groin. I couldn't figure out how to get rid of it. So I downed a bunch of water and I dumped some salt in here as well. And that was really helpful. So if you guys have some questions, I want to continue to help you guys to lose weight. I want to help you guys continue to troubleshoot all things related to sugar fasting. so that you guys can become more betterists. We got some questions?
Yeah, Emily Berry says, do you expect to have more shifts in weight when you start eating more fiber and veggies?
Yeah, that can happen for sure. Eating vegetables and stuff like that can they can just, I don't know, these maybe sit in your stomach a little bit more. The more fibrous stuff is going to probably need more water, and so there's a bunch of reasons why that can be so. I think, if we're looking at this as more of a long-term play, like I want people to be able to follow the nutritional protocol for a while, I don't want to say like don't eat vegetables, because I will eat vegetables sometimes. What I do is I wouldn't advise a salad necessarily. Like that might be a little bit too much or too thick. It's not gonna certainly not gonna make you like hold body fat or anything like that, but it might make you literally hold weight. And we're trying to get the weight down. Cole is saying weight is weight, and I think that's a good message. Like we're really trying to just get that weight down, and even if it's just temporary, it is still encouraging to see that scale dropping. So I wouldn't necessarily cut out vegetables, but I would just use them sparingly. Like what I'm doing is I'll do a little bit of pickles, and pickles are fruit. Cucumber's fruit. It's primarily a fucking vegetable, right? For argument's sake, it's kind of a vegetable. I just ate some pickles just now, but I wouldn't necessarily like just go chomping on a lot of like real heavy greens, or go to a restaurant and get like a big old salad or something like that. You could do it here and there. There's no harm, no foul with that, but it's probably not going to lead to the quickest results. And remember, the quickest results aren't always the best results, but they are the quickest, so they feel good. And I think that's important to go after as well. Something else I'll do is I have balsamic vinegar that I pour on cherry tomatoes, I think they're called. And holy shit, that's really good. I also pull balsamic vinegar on some cucumbers, and that's also really good. Again, cucumber, I think, is a fruit because it's got like the seeds in it or whatever. And that's a really good option. I will also sometimes have arugula and the cherry tomatoes. And actually, now that I think about it, that would be really good. Arugula, cherry tomatoes, and cucumber as a salad. But you could kind of make like almost like a cucumber salad and throw like a little vinegar on there of some sort, kind of like they have at some of those sushi restaurants. Throw some sugar on there, get it like a little sweet. Those are all decent options. I don't have any problem with fruit, but it could potentially be something that just interferes with the weight loss more like in the short term. Next question.
Gino says, had a couple of hypoglycemia episodes the first 3 days of sugar fasting. I threw up a bunch on the third day sugar fasting. Anyone else have this experience?
Damn. That's pretty interesting. I haven't heard anybody talk about throwing up. It's hard, when you guys say what your symptoms are. If Gino, if you can follow up and give us some more information, like what in the fuck did you eat, dude? Did you have some giant blowout and just have like tons and tons of sugar? And like, what was your diet before? Were you eating fruit? Have you ever had carbohydrates in the last couple of years, or like, were you just like, I don't know, slugging down and gulping down like giant things of sugar? Whatever the case is, it seems like you had a very bad reaction to sugar. And that's something I think to explore. I think this is actually really good to now have this knowledge, like what happened? How do we get to the bottom of this? We may not ever know exactly what happened, but we can just have some logical, use some logic moving forward. Use some common sense moving forward. So moving forward, let's just, if you're going to try it again, which I don't even know if you're going to try it again, but if you're going to try it again, my suggestion would be to go low and slow. My suggestion would be, why don't you primarily eat fruit, or before every single time you're going to have anything that's sugar fasting approved or sugar diet approved, maybe just eat a little bit of fruit first. And if you eat a little bit of fruit, actually eat some blueberries, actually eat some raspberries, some blackberries, actually eat some, peaches, actually, physically actually eat some fruit, and then have, whatever meal it was that you're going to have. That should help a lot. Then also with the actual meals, try to just drive down the overall amount that you were eating.
Ray wants to know, is dextrose a good idea pre-workout?
You know, like if someone's talking about like a dextrose powder or something like that, it's just like not necessary. It's not really needed. I mean, all the, you know, the fruits are amazing pre-workout. I've been doing that a lot. I will sometimes have some candy pre-workout as well, but for now, fruit and fruit juice, sticking to that as much as I possibly can, going through this whole week and really just trying to rip off and strip off some body fat. I don't think there's really necessarily at the moment, I don't have any information that would lead me to believe that dextrose has any advantage over what's available to you now with sugar, honey, maple syrup, candy, fruit, and fruit juice.
Robert wants to know about whole milk at night. Is that okay?
No, whole milk does not fit. Whole milk does not fit into the diet at all, really. It has protein and it has fat. And so when we're sugar fasting, we don't want protein or fat. We're trying to keep that basically at zero. When we're utilizing the sugar diet, where we go fruit by day, lean meat and starch by night, that's where we can have some fats and things like that. And that is potentially where you could have some milk. But I don't think of milk as a weight loss product. So if you're someone that doesn't really care about your weight loss, then, and you just are looking for nutrition and you just like milk, then I would keep the milk in there. But if you're trying to lose weight, I haven't seen really anyone lose weight well with whole milk in there.
Madeline wants to know if there's any limitations around bananas because she knows that they have higher starches.
I think just try it, you know, and I think a banana that's like brown, a banana that's browning, a banana that's ripening is awesome. And I don't think that, I don't think you really need to worry about bananas a ton, but I would just try it for yourself and see, like, are you losing weight? And if you're not losing weight, then maybe it is the bananas. And then maybe you just start to reduce them. That's what this episode right here is all about. We're trying to troubleshoot. I heard some people have some issues with some dates. So those things can be problematic. You got dates and you got banana. They both have some starch in them. Probably figs probably do too. But like, I don't think there's a big reason to be hung up on that. I eat figs probably every day and I haven't had issues with weight loss. But I would say, yeah, if you just were to sit there and like gnaw on figs for like all day, then maybe that would be a problem. But I think figs are awesome. I think they're delicious. I think a lot of these fruits that we have options with are really delicious. I like banana quite a bit. And actually, I'll pour some honey on banana. I'll pour some honey and salt on banana. And it's actually absolutely amazing. Sometimes I'll put a banana into my smoothie bowl. So my smoothie bowl, again, is like a big old bolus of fruit. Sometimes it's like frozen fruit that I let thaw a little bit. Sometimes it's fresh fruit. Put it in a bowl. Maybe I'll chop up a banana and stick it in there, and then I'll dump the remains of what I blended up. I'll dump that onto my food.
Blake James says, "Hey Mark, where does the Randall cycle fit in with all this?"
Well, the Randall cycle is taken care of because you're not eating fat. So the Randall cycle, my belief and my understanding of it has to do with fat and carbohydrates. And you have separated out the fat and carbohydrates. You're only eating carbohydrates. And on the day that you're doing the sugar diet, when you go sugar fast by day, lean meat and starch by night, you're only having very minimal amounts of fat. So my understanding about the Randall cycle, I know Thomas DeLauer's made some videos about it, and some other people that are very intelligent and very scientific have made some videos about it. My understanding about it is not vast, but I do understand that the energy that you're consuming seems to be both competing for a cell at the same time, and then I think your body just kind of gives up and it's just like, hey, let's just store fat. At least that's my very vague kindergarten-ish understanding of what's going on. So the Randall cycle, I think, is very much taken care of when you're considering sugar fasting.
Chris F says, "For somebody already lean who loves the energy from sugar, what is a good fat threshold? 50 to 70?
A fat threshold, yeah, in terms of like how much fat you can have in a day. I think that sounds really reasonable. You know, my recommendations are usually It would depend on how much fat and protein you're eating during the week. Like how many days are you actually sugar fasting? If you're sugar fasting, 5 or 6 days a week, then you would be able to have more fat. You understand? It's like you saved up to have more fat in an individual meal. But I still recommend very, very low fat, because what I want to see people do when they switch to back to their like more regular diet, when they get their body in the shape that they want to be in, they maybe switch to some sort of macro cycling, or they switch to something where they're not sugar fasting as often. I want them to kind of have that in the back of their head, that that's a great tool to have, is to go very low fat on stuff. I'm not saying not to eat fat at all. I'm not fear mongering fat. I'm not saying like, keep your fats below 10 or anything like that every single day. But what I do think is important is for people to learn how important it is to lower their fat. I've said this many times before. If you can wave a magic wand and people were only eating 50 to 60 grams of fat a day, I think it would be very hard for people to accumulate body fat. It wouldn't be impossible, but it would probably be difficult. So when I kind of think about the recommendations for fat, I like to really sink them down pretty low, because I want to see some really good progress. I don't want willy-nilly progress from people. And so if I tell people 50, they'll probably have 60. If I tell people 60, they'll probably have 70. That's the way it works. And especially when you're dealing with people that are fat and that have been fat for a long time, they tend to like lie a little bit, or people that just struggled with their diet. Again, you don't even have to be fat, but people have just struggled with their diet. They lie to themselves constantly, and they just, even if they're trying to track stuff, they lie about how they're tracking it and so on. And it's just a way to avoid that is actually just to sink them down a little lower. So my recommendation for fats is usually around 30 on days that you're not sugar fasting, on a day where maybe you're doing the sugar diet, where you go fruit and then lean meat and starch by night.
IQ Ballin says, do you eat cereal raw or with skim milk? I've been doing skim chocolate milk and add maple syrup. So damn good.
Everything just depends on the scale. So for me, maybe there'll be a time where I can mix cereal in the mix more, but I have to kind of be careful with that. I need a good amount of sugar fasting days. When I was doing the Smelly Protocol every 2.5 days, that worked really well. And then when I came off of that, I could have some starch. I could have some pasta. I could have some frosted flakes. I could have some of these things. And so that's where it fit in pretty well. And if you look at the Smelly Protocol, 1.5 and 2.5, both of them are trying to encourage people to really be a weekend warrior. Like go and train your fucking ass off on the weekend. When you have less responsibilities, you don't have to be at work all day. Wake up at like 7 o'clock and go train at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. You'll have the whole day with you and your significant other. You don't have to worry about any of that being compromised. You'll be back home well before noon. You'll be back home at 11 or 10, and you guys can still go and do your thing. If you have a family, it's the same thing. You'll be back with everybody, soon thereafter. And so the way that I set up those protocols was to allow for the lean meat and starch to start much earlier in the day. And so it can be a day where you sort of load up, and it's kind of exciting. Like you wake up on Saturday, Sunday, and you're all pumped, or it's Friday night, and you're like, holy shit, this is great. Tomorrow I get to load up on some protein, and I get to load up on some starch. So I would recommend that to people. And thank you for the recommendation on the chocolate syrup. I haven't tried that yet. I'll have to give that a go. But remember, we can be as excited as we want about these different things that we're able to sneak into sugar fasting and the sugar diet, but we want to make sure that scale is going downward.
Max Fanning says, Mark, I've been a fan since 2012. I've been doing sugar for a few days. I'm down from 311 to 306. I was wondering if you think the Smelly Protocol version 2.5 would be my best starting point, or something else.
Start there. That sounds great. Great job already losing weight. I would just say, if you try the Smelly Protocol and the weight loss is slow, add in an extra sugar fast. I think Saturday, Sunday gives you like a little bit of leeway, and you get to have a little bit more starch, and you get to have a little bit more protein, which is fine. And I think also Sunday I said, hey, if you can have a cheat if you think you can handle it. But again, everything has to do with the weight loss. Start to have a weight loss log. Maybe right next to the scale, like write it down. I'd say like write it down or communicate with ChatGPT. That's what I've been doing, and I've been telling it my weight every day. Apps are fine, but I don't love everything being done for you. I think that a step in between is important. So like when I communicate to ChatGPT, because I talk to it, I hear myself say it, and then it repeats shit back to me. And I think those inputs are really important because it's like more messaging back and forth. Or if you actually write it down, you're seeing it. Like imagine you just have a composition notebook, right? And it's a page, it's like this. And up top you see, it says 220. And the next day it says 221. And the next day it says 221. And the next day it says 220. The next day it says 220. At the top, you should write lose weight, weight loss, okay? And then you see those numbers that are always around 220. You need to ask yourself, why am I 220? Why am I stuck here? 220, 220. We want to see it like this, 220, 219, 220, 218, 219, right? We want to see it. It's going to bounce a little bit. It's going to go back and forth a little bit. 217 and then 218, right? And it's going to continue to trend downward. Every once in a while, it's going to skip up. Maybe you had a day where you weren't super compliant. Maybe you were, off menu. And the weight went back up to 222. That's okay. Let's hit it with 2 sugar fasts. You hit it with 2 sugar fasts and you're right back to 217. Bada bing, bada boom. But without that weight log, we don't really know what's going on. Like I need you guys to at least track that. I know some of you, are super caught up in the calories, and I want you to be liberated away from that. But I do want to get you on the scale, and I want you to pay attention to the scale because we need to be losing weight. When somebody asks you, hey, how's that diet thing? You're doing a weird thing with the sugar. I don't want you being like, oh, I want you to be like, holy fuck, dude, I lost 40 pounds. Or you don't even have to say anything. Somebody else is like, holy fuck, have you lost 40 pounds? They're going to see it. They're going to see it in your face. They're going to see it in your body. They're going to see it everywhere on you. So yeah, go for it with the Smelly Protocol 2.5. And then I just, again, am really heavily encouraging people to get on the scale. It's going to be the fastest way that we can help you to troubleshoot. And when you guys send me messages, and even when you write in here, it's helpful if you write your weight. It's helpful if you put your weight down. If you try to give me just a little bit more information when you DM me. It's kind of same thing, like put your weight in there, because when I can see the weight, it gives me a lot more weight and height even. Like give me your weight and height, because if you're 5'6" and you're 240, well, that's quite different than you being 6'6" and 240. Someone who's 6'6" and 240, I'm going to give some different recommendations to. Someone who's 5'6" and 40 at 240 is going to get a way different recommendation as well.
Valhalla Warrior Fit says, if I'm 10 to 12% body fat, would you suggest fruit by day, meat at night, or still sugar fast 36 hours a few days of the week?
Yeah, sugar fast 36 hours a few days a week. You can try to follow Smelly Protocol 1.5, or you can try to follow Smelly Protocol 2.5. Smelly Protocol 2.5 is going to pull weight off you faster. I would start there. I still think 12%, 13% body fat is not a body fat percentage. Like for someone that works out often, it's not a body fat percentage that someone is really that pumped about hanging around at, unless they have like considerable amounts of muscle. So I know you guys want to make the changes, and I want to see you make the changes too. And so you guys are here asking questions, and I want to assist you and help you with that. So for anyone that is really troubleshooting and trying to figure out how do I actually lose the weight, weigh yourself and sugar fast. Weigh yourself, sugar fast. Sugar fast, sugar fast, sugar fast, and weigh yourself. Going back and forth between those two things is going to be really super duper pooper scooper important. And on top of that, if for some reason sugar fasting is failing you a little bit, it's like literally not working that well, well, then we might have to cut out the candy. Then we might have to cut out or cut back on the maple syrup. Then we might have to cut out or cut back the honey. And then we might be reduced to hardly anything. We might be fruit fasting. We might be smoothie fasting. We might be juice fasting. That's what we might have to take it to. But hey, look, whatever way we can pull the weight off, right?
Soul Train says, how do you feel about carb cycling with the sugar fast, then going into protein-focused diet depending on your goals?
I think it'd be great. I think there's so many options here, and I don't know what you're referring to exactly, whether you're referring to, doing that over time, or if you're referring to doing that like within a week. But in any case, I think it's all, that's what makes this diet so special. And Cole, said it in the beginning. He said it's more of a fast than it is a diet, which is interesting to say. Sugar fasting is more of a fast than it is a diet, and that's kind of what makes it like you could just plug it into any diet protocol. You could be paleo, but you can also utilize sugar fasting. You could be vertical, and you can also utilize sugar fasting. You could be follow any of these favorite diets that you have, and you could be sugar fasting. I mean, it should work for every single diet that you do, whether it's carnivore or keto. It should kind of work for those too. I guess there would be a little bit of question of like, it wouldn't really make sense to keto, because keto takes a few weeks for your body to usually adapt to it. It takes a while to like get in ketosis. So I could see that maybe doesn't make that much sense now that I think about it, but maybe I'm overthinking it. But yeah, switching to your favorite diet and switching back and forth between that and sugar fasting, I think is you're going to see a lot of people doing that.
Ray wants to know if you can briefly explain the Smelly Protocol.
Smelly Protocol 2.5, which was the first one that I did. It's 2.5 days of sugar fasting with those 6 foods I mention all the time, which is honey, maple syrup, fruit juice, sugar, and candy. Sugar fasting for 2.5 days, and on that last day, you are then switching into having lean meat and starch. And then you repeat. You go 2.5 days again. And this is, I've been posting this on my story, and we'll have to keep it in like a saved category so you guys can see it. I will do my best to keep posting that as much as I can so you guys can see that. But yeah, it's just basically 2.5 days sugar fast. In the latter half of the day, you're moving into lean meat and starch, and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again. There's a little bit more leeway there, but there's really no reason to even mention it right now at the moment. I did say earlier that with the Smelly Protocol, I am giving you more leeway on the weekend, and on the weekend you are having a little bit more lean meat and starch. If you had an awesome workout session on Saturday and Sunday, then just have that post-workout.
Girl Trader says, I'm not adding any fats for 8 days. Is that going to be a problem? I'm an older woman.
I guess we'll find out. If that's where you're at and that's what you're doing, then we can kind of see. You're not going to cause irreversible damage in any way in just a couple days. Not consuming any fat for a while, it might be kind of scary. But again, you got to keep in mind you're going to be burning body fat. So when you're losing body fat, like body fat is a nutrient. We have nutrient storage on our body. We have fat storage on our body. So your body is going to be utilizing that. It's not the same as dietary fat. Some people even said like it sort of depends on what you've been eating for a while. So if you have had a bunch of omega-6s and a bunch of PUFAs and polyunsaturated fats and stuff like that, that potentially those will be released into your system when you're losing body fat, which is a little scary. You're like, oh shit, you're kind of getting hit with whatever you ate before, which is interesting and makes a lot of sense. But it's not like you're without any fat. I don't know how much fat the body's liberating off of the body every day, but it's liberating enough to where your body shouldn't be screwed up. Again, I want to mention, I think it's of importance, like people that are over dieting and people that are super low fat and people that are like bodybuilding, those are the people that really suffer from having these really adverse effects from being low fat. I don't think your average person is going to notice anything from being low fat. I've been low fat for months now. I've been very low fat for months. I don't notice any fatigue from it. I don't notice any irritability. I don't notice any change in hormones. You know, I do tell people all the time I am on performance enhancing drugs. I do utilize testosterone. So obviously that could play into it big time. But there's a lot of people that are doing this diet as well, and they're not enhanced. They're not utilizing TRT. So yeah, that's basically my recommendation. Like, why don't you just, you know, give it a shot, as you're saying, like you're giving it a go. And I think that's the best way to like learn and find out. Lastly,